If you take too long, then the person you were targeting is a senior in college now, and it's too late to recruit that person, or they didn't go to college.
Yeah, even
which
worse.
is even worse.
Right.
Right. So when you have that idea, you realize you should have done this. It's just like I say all the time. Parents should join the PTA the day they find out they're pregnant.
Touche. Good point.
Because the work that they need to do for their children, the work they need to do in the school that their children are going to go to, if they want their children to benefit from their work, they need to start 6 years ahead of time.
Yeah, you got to build the foundation before you can put the kids onto it.
Well, it's not that. It's not just that. It's the nature of the work.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Philip Nelson.
Down the road.
Down the road. Thank you.
Just think about this, and I'm sorry to interrupt. No, I'm not, but I'm going to interrupt anyhow.
Yeah, I know you're not going to let me finish on you. Go ahead. I love to see your excitement when you get excited about it.
But think about this. We talk about the profession being having diversity issues, and the need for potential veterinarians to see the opportunities that are there early on in the game. This concept of a summer camp is almost like they do in the city, where they take kids out of the city and bring them into the country and give them a chance to go camping and shoot archery and do all sorts of different things. What about and I know we've got this veterinary leadership experience that's focused on creating leaders in the veterinary profession, but what about creating the veterinary potential experience summer camp and making it accessible, or making a model accessible in LA and Denver and Chicago and Washington, DC?
I mean, that is being done, but
good.
But it's not being done in one organization. And so I hear your excitement. I like it, and I understand the viewpoint. Just remember that there are 32 colleges.
Right.
And Michigan has always had a summer camp.
Really?
Yes. They started it. They were doing it when I applied to vet school.
Wow, that was in the age of the dinosaur.
I know. It was one of the leaders in diversity back then. And Tuskegee had a summer camp. Mississippi State had a summer camp. Purdue has a summer camp. And now Colorado just got funding on a regional basis. So our plan was to hold our summer camp, but we were going to bus people in or bring them to campus, because at some point they need to see the campus and just get out of their environment.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's a gradual thing, right? We started at 8th grade. And we took 8th graders to seniors, and we let it be known that we're going to be watching you, and we're going to be looking at your performance. And if you convince us that you really might be interested in vet med, because we know that 80% of them are going to come in and realize, I like this. Let's see what dentistry does. Or I might want to be a doctor, an MD. And so we know we're going to lose people, but that's okay. We've improved their lives, and we've helped the healthcare profession.
Absolutely.
And if they become an engineer, we don't care. We just don't want them not to become something, right?
Absolutely. That's the concept of this anamnestic response, where you're constantly giving them a little bit of booster shot.
Yeah.
So that they eventually follow the path. Absolutely. This is not a one-shot vaccination.
We need to get them out of the environment, and we bring them to campus for our summer camp.
All right.
And then one of them might make it to Colorado.
This is how you take the boat and get it away from the iceberg and get it back into open water. We got to slowly redirect the ship, the Titanic, away from the iceberg and into open water by giving them these opportunities.
And I'm just saying it just takes time and coordination.
Yeah, and I got to keep remembering this is a marathon and not a sprint.
That's right. I enjoy it when I see you get excited. It's the logistics and it's the psychology as well. But if you didn't have that sense of urgency, then you're going to miss out on an 8th grader.
Right.
Right? If you take too long, then the person you were targeting is a senior in college now, and it's too late to recruit that person, or they didn't go to college.
Yeah, even
which
worse.
is even worse.
Right.
Right. So when you have that idea, you realize you should have done this. It's just like I say all the time. Parents should join the PTA the day they find out they're pregnant.
Touche. Good point.
Because the work that they need to do for their children, the work they need to do in the school that their children are going to go to, if they want their children to benefit from their work, they need to start 6 years ahead of time.
Yeah, you got to build the foundation before you can put the kids onto it.
Well, it's not that. It's not just that. It's the nature of the work. When I moved to North Carolina, you're going to like this story. But when we moved to North Carolina, it's 12 o'clock. I'm sorry.
Keep going.
We just warmed up. Look, okay, so when we moved to North Carolina, we went to North Carolina because it was at a time when North Carolina was investing $1.6 billion in K through 12 education. Okay. They were building schools all over the place. And we were excited about the fact that that was happening when I was going to be going to graduate school. And North Carolina was being billed as having the best K through 12 system in the nation, right? At least that's what the outside perspective was, okay? I went in and bought a house on a golf course, okay? In a golf course community, knowing that I'm going to have my children in some of the best high schools in the world. And obviously, I've located them in a good area, right? My child was bused into the inner city because that community was predominantly white. And because they were integrating the schools, they were busing kids into, my child went to the worst school in the system.
So you bought a house in the best part of town only to have your kids shipped to the worst part of town.
I refuse to characterize that.
Okay, but
characterize it that way, but you get my drift.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, I bought a house in a recently developed neighborhood, and my child was bused to a school that had never received appropriate resources because of its location in that town. And I found myself fighting the same battles because even though they were spending $1.2 billion in education, this was happening when Andrew hit Florida.
Okay.
And there was a shortage of building materials because of all the homes they were building and rebuilding in Florida. Prices went up, and that 1.2 billion didn't go as far, but it went to the affluent neighborhoods first. And by the time they got to this school, there was no money left, which once again shows you how the system is stacked. And so I joined a PTA. I went to the school, and I had Darcy and I now had the unique position of saying, I don't want to send my child to that school. I wasn't going to do that. Instead, I decided to use my experience in education, to use my professionalism, to use my experience in race relations, to use my intellectual position that public education should be public education and should be good. And I'm going to make sure my child gets what they need to get out of this education, even if they go to that school. And to avoid taking the elitist stand, I did find it ironic that my child was being bused into the school they would have been in had I lived in that neighborhood. I did find it ironic that I'm still in a minority majority school, whether I liked it or not. I wonder what they would have said if I said, "You sure you want to bust my child in there? Because that's not achieving what you want to achieve." I probably could have gotten an exemption, but I didn't. So I joined the PTA, and the first thing I noticed was they had some space problems. According to their plan, they wanted to limit the class size to 24 a class, something like that, per teacher. And this school had a student teacher ratio of 1 to 36, and yet they couldn't build any money to add classrooms for this school. It should have been at the top it should have been the first thing they did but instead they built new schools in the new developments that they were going to develop, right? And by the time they got to the inner city school, they didn't have more money, So I had to fight for that. And one of the things that when the principal saw that she had an advocate, because I used to go to the city school council meetings to advocate, and they were like, "Who is this guy? I've never seen him before." I told him, I said, "Look, I was raised in Mississippi. I came here from Alabama, and both states are known to have the poorest school systems in the nation. And now I come to North Carolina and find out that the conditions are the same in my school. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm causing the problem. But you're not living up to your promise." And one of the things that I got changed, just one of the physical things I got changed was the school was located in this impoverished neighborhood that had narrow streets, and the buses, when they came to pick the kids up, they would park on the side of the street, and literally a third of the street be taken by this line of buses by the sidewalk. Well, the parents that had to pick up their kids were on the other side of the street.
Mm.
And then the kids would come out when school was out, and they run in the middle of the street to get on the bus or to get into the cars. And now the buses are taking off, the cars are taking off, and there are kids in the street, and it was just an accident waiting to happen. And the principal showed me this. She said, "You need to come here one day when school gets out. I want to show you something." And so she showed me this cluster, yeah. And I said, "Wow." She said, "What we need is a turnaround so that the buses can get off the street and then get back on it easily without endangering the kids. It's only going to cost us $200,000, but we can't ever seem to get the money." So I went to the school council, made my pitch. Nothing happened. They said, "Yeah, it's important. We're going to get it done." And there's the press and everything there. And I waited a month. Nothing happened. I think I waited 3 or 4 months, and I went back. And so finally, I told the principal, "The council moves around from school to school. When have they been to our school?" And she said, "They've never been here as long as I've been principal." I said, "Then you should invite them." I said, but invite them at the time that school is out.
Right.
So she did. A year later, they planned their council meeting at our school. Then I said, now invite the press.
Shrewd, Dr. Nelson, shrewd.
And so they invited the press. So when the council came in, they walked up, they didn't know the press was there. You know, they said, so where are we having the meeting? You know, and I said, well, before we have the meeting, I want you to see something. And then the bell rang. And when the bell rang, the kids came out and the press came out. And then the press started asking me questions. I will remember this to this day. The chair of the council, she just looked at me. She turned red as, I mean, I've never seen a person so mad. And I didn't tell them the council was there. You knew they were on pins and needles. And then principal said, we've informed the council and they promised they're going to take care of it, but we can't afford to wait another year. It's going to take a year to do the project. And we received none of the funds that were allotted for K through 12. And in our classrooms, our student teacher ratio is way above what they say is ideal. And so we can't even get classrooms. But right now it's safety that we're worried about. And we still want money for classrooms, right? Well, the principal and I had already said, we're not going to tell the press that the council's here. And so after we did that little stunt, we then escorted the council in to their conference, into the conference room to have their meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked at us, and at that point, the chair had calmed down, and she said, I don't know if I should be angry or admire your strategy. I said, I really don't care as long as you understand the importance of our need. She said, well, I want you to know I appreciate the fact that you did not grandstand in front of the council in the press. And I said, well, I appreciate the fact that you noticed that. But fast forward, by the time they finished that turnaround, my kids left. All the work that I did was for somebody else's kids. That's why you should join the PTA the moment you know you're pregnant.
Well, I think we just came up with the name for the last 5 or 6 minutes of the podcast, which is Pregnancy Equals PTA. Thank you. Enjoy listening and share. No, I mean, it's a great story, and you haven't stopped helping other people.
No.
Thank you for joining us for another courageous conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.